But when we used to go and see my dad, he just had to sit in that chair. He wasn't allowed to go to the canteen bit or anything. He just had to sit there. It was intense. It was a tough time, you know.
I say that the main thing I felt was confusion and isolation.
Yeah.
From other people my age, because I wasn't a child when I was 7. You know, I was already way more mature because I had to be.
You're getting emotional.
Yeah, I am.
What? What's that coming from? Where's that coming from?
Because it was them. They were the ones. They were the only ones that helped me through it. And if it wasn't for George, Nick, and my mum, I don't know. I don't know where I'd be, but they were the whole. They were my purpose.
Yeah.
We stood strong next to each other.
Dysfunction is everywhere. In our families, in our cultures, and in our systems. And this is Dysfunctional, the podcast that helps you name the things that most people can't or won't see. Let's call it out, break it down, and maybe even start a bloody revolution.
Okay, today I am very excited to be joined by Lulu and Georgina, who are sisters. Let's get that straight from the beginning. And have experienced parental imprisonment. As a result of that, they are both advocates for the charity Children Heard and Seen. For the charity Children Heard and Seen. And today we're going to explore what their experiences of living life with a parent in prison is like. So Lulu, we're going to start with you. Why don't you start by telling us what life was like for you when you were younger?
Yep. I think how I'd explain life when I was younger in a few words is probably confusing, chaotic, and a strange sense of a warped normality. Mm-hmm. Because based off of what I went through, my dad went to prison when I was 7. I was very young, very confused, and I didn't have the same sort of upbringing as my friends did. So there was also an element of comparison as well, I'd say.
Right. Always comparing what your life was like for the other children that you knew.
Yeah.
And you were 7
when
you went to prison. Okay, so Georgina, what was it like for you?
It was the same. I mean, at the time I was working, I was I was a buyer for a construction company. And it was just horrible. It was a horrible experience.
So you were an adult?
I was a teenager.
Okay, so you was working.
Yeah. I was working.
Yeah. So maybe we should start. Let's start with why your dad went to prison. Can we do that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to start?
Yeah, our dad went to prison for the first time for VAT fraud.
Okay.
And then following that, after his 4-year sentence for VAT fraud, he was given a proceeds of crime.
Right. So he went to prison for 4 years.
4 years, came out.
Yeah,
and then he was with the proceeds of crime.
Right. Can you just explain what that is?
A proceeds of crime is when you are given an order for the government to take back all the money that you made from the proceeds of the crime that you committed. So the VAT fraud, they wanted all the money back that he had made from that particular crime. And that was an 11-year sentence that he got for that.
That's bizarre to me, by the way. So he went to prison for the crime.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then when he came out of prison, did his 4 years, came out, they then said, we now want the money back.
Yep.
And because he didn't have it?
He didn't have it to pay it back, so they gave him a sentence instead.
Did you know that was going to happen? Or did you know there was a chance
that we knew there was a chance that it could happen?
Yeah, there was always
always a chance. But what can you do when the money's not there? You can't get it back.
Yeah.
It's gone. So.
Okay.
But I think what's important about that as well is like, you get used to him being back and then he's gone again.
Yeah.
So it's that sort of realization as well that it's not consistent, you know?
Yeah. And you're like 12 when he comes out?
The first time,
yeah.
Yeah. So you're still a child, yeah? Now, the reason I wanted to start with this is because when it happened, it was quite a big deal in the press here, yeah? Because we're talking quite a lot of money.
Yeah, it was a lot of money. So it was a media frenzy. Every Sunday he was on the front page of the newspapers. There was always articles about him in the papers, and they made him like this gangster mafia guy, which he wasn't. But the media, they'll try to.
Yeah, they have a field day.
They had an absolute field day, and at the time I was working, and I remember going to my office for work, and my dad was front page on the newspapers, and and my bosses, they used to get the newspapers for to have outside the office for the clients coming to have the meetings, and my dad was front page on the newspaper, outside my boss's office.
And you didn't know that was going to happen until you saw it?
No, I didn't know until I saw it. Actually, I think we got a phone call that morning to say that someone had told us, your dad's on the front page, and I was actually going around the office collecting all the newspapers because my dad was front page.
So what was that like for you? And I'm going to ask you in a second as well, Luke, but what was it like for you as somebody in a working life to come in and do that? Like, what's going through your mind when you see that?
It was hard, and I felt so judged by everyone in that office.
Did they know?
Some of them knew, and it was a bit hard not to know because everyone, it was a small area. Everyone knew my dad. Everyone knew what he had done, and
same surname at that point as well.
Yeah, no, I had the same surname. It was before I was married, so it was just I felt very judged by everyone.
And you're young in your work life then as well?
Yeah, you're trying to start your career as a young person. You're not quite sure where you're going. You're just trying to find your feet. And
was your career what it is now then as well?
No.
Right, because that would have added another layer, right?
Yeah, no, it did, and I changed. I went into I did a law degree after because I didn't want to continue that.
So, but you're new in your career and your working life, and you got to deal with that being on the front of the paper.
Yeah.
Now, just before, because I want to ask what it was like for you as a child. Before we say that, just for people listening, right? I feel like this is important. The fraud was, can I the fraud? What the fraud was? It was VAT fraud, right?
Yeah.
Now, in my eyes, by the way, I sort of see that as a little bit of like a Robin Hood story, right? But the reason I'm saying that is because this wasn't like a bunch of innocent people that your dad was like, he wasn't leaving loads of like families out of money and stuff like that, right? I don't know why that feels important. It does to me. I know that probably in the press they would have framed it as he's stealing my money.
The taxpayers' money.
Taxpayers' money, yeah. But it doesn't, for me, as somebody that pays a lot of VAT, I sort of, when I heard it, I was like, yes, man, he's taking money off him. That's what I felt. But as a child, you were still a child when it was all on the front. What's that like for you as a kid?
I would say as I got older, I started to realise the judgment. But at that time, I was so confused because I started to have friends turn against me. I'd go to school. I wasn't invited to birthday parties anymore. I was told, you can't come to my birthday party because your dad's a criminal. And then, trying to process all those emotions because I was young. I just wanted to have friends and go to school and have fun and, be a child. So I think for me, it was more the confusion of, whoa, what have I done? I haven't done anything wrong. Why can't I come to your birthday party? You've been invited to mine. So I think for me, it was a lot of confusion, a lot of dissociation as well. I think I dissociated a lot as a child because I just had to keep going. My norm was going to see my dad on prison on a Saturday, not going to the park with my mum and dad. And I think having that kind of realization as a kid, I'm actually living a completely different life to these people. So I would say that the main thing I felt was confusion and isolation from other people my age, because I wasn't a child when I was 7. I was already way more mature because I had to be. I didn't have a choice. So I think a lot of it was the confusion and isolation for me.
Can you remember conversations with like other friends, like kids that were like literally saying you can't?
Yeah, I replay them all the time. And I think that's something that will always stay with me, because I just would go into school, and if my dad was in the paper on the weekend, my mum would drop me off in the morning, and all the parents would be in that, you know, the school area gossiping about my dad. Lou can't come here. Lou's not allowed there. It was horrible.
Adults as well,
Yeah.
innit? You heard adults
Yeah.
saying that stuff.
Yeah, one child that actually came and told me, "You're not invited to my birthday party because your dad's a criminal." Her mum ended up coming and knocking on our door and saying, "Oh, I'm so sorry that she said that." And my mum turned around and said, "Well, she's heard it from you."
Yeah, because she's not
Yeah.
come up with that as a kid.
She's not come up with that narrative. You're teaching that narrative. And I never did anything wrong. I was only 7 years old. But those conversations were running deep from all my friends. The only people that I actually found a bit of comfort with was the children that I used to socialise with when I used to go see my dad in prison.
And actually,
Wow.
you're still friends.
I'm still friends with them. Yeah.
With the
Yeah,
kids
with
when
the
you met
kids, yeah.
visiting your dad in prison.
Yep.
Yeah.
All different families. Don't have a clue what their dads were in prison for. But I think between us, we had a shared understanding, and we are still friends to this day.
Wow.
Yeah.
So did you used to visit your dad together?
Lou used to have family visits with my dad as well, because she wasn't quite the age, like she was under a certain age, so she was still able to have like family visits on a Saturday. with my dad.
What do you mean by family visit?
So, well, you
So on a Saturday it's more like a relaxed visit. So they would have like games out for the kids to play, and like
the younger kids,
Yeah.
like babies and
Yeah, my dad was more like free to walk around the visits hall. Whereas like when we used to go during the week, my dad had to sit down. We weren't allowed to like get up and walk around with him. It was a much more confined visit.
Yeah.
Whereas on the Saturday, it was more relaxed to kind of make a better environment for the children that were there.
So Lou got that. Lou had the chance to have that with my dad, where me and our other sister, Nicolette, the middle one, we didn't, because we were much older. So Lou had the chance to have them family visits, but because we were older, we didn't.
Were you allowed to go to the family visits?
No.
No.
So you had to be like what, like a kid?
They're like, yeah, I think I can't remember the age, but it was up to a certain age the kids were allowed to have these family visits with the dad. And like Lou says, it was more free, it was more relaxed. But when we used to go and see my dad, he just had to sit in that chair. He wasn't allowed to go to the canteen bit or anything. He just had to sit there. So
Shit.
yeah.
Yeah, and that's hard, man.
Yeah, it was intense. It was a tough time, you know.
And you'd been through a lot up, and I want to talk about the visits a bit more in a moment, but you'd been through a lot in the run-up to him going to prison.
Oh, God, yeah.
Can you just, because you're a little bit older, right? So you, like, fully remember a life
Yeah.
before any of this started,
yeah.
before any of the fraud and that started?
Yeah, before that, we had, like, police raids. We had all different kinds of craziness come to our door, you know. But then before that, we had the normal life, you know. So it was a shock, because we had went from a normal life to something completely strange.
Yeah.
And you're just thrown in the deep end, and you're just like, okay, we need to survive this,
Yeah.
you know. And you know, my mum, she really tried her best, you
Yeah, she
know. She did everything she could for us to kind of live as much of a normal life as we could. But it wasn't easy, not when you're in the papers every week and on Good Morning TV, on Watchdog and Scotland's Most Wanted. You know, it was insane.
And it's all like pictures of him everywhere and stuff like
everywhere,
that.
yeah.
Did you get anybody, did you as a more of an adult, so as an older person, was you ever confronted by people
No one ever really confronted me, but then from that age, I kind of learned to just keep my circle very small. You know, I was a bit older, so I was able to be a little bit more selective about who my friends were. And the 5 friends that I had are still my best friends to this day, you know. And they were the ones that I would find comfort in, and I would really just keep away from everybody else, because I was a young girl. I didn't want to be confronted by anyone. I wanted to go out and have fun and live my life, but it was never really like that for me.
No.
Where were you living at the time?
We were living in Scotland.
So this is when you lived in Scotland.
Yeah.
So I grew up in a place called Swindon, right? If I'm trying to think now, when I was in my mid to late teens, I'm going out every weekend.
Yeah.
Right? And if this had happened to me, if my dad had gone to prison, I'd feel like everybody was talking about it.
Yeah, it felt like
It
that.
did.
It did feel like that. I would still go out. I would still go out with my friends. I would still try and be as normal as possible, but everyone knew who my dad was. Everyone knew what he had done. He had like designer shops in the middle of Stirling, so everybody knew who he was. And I would go out.
Not just because he'd gone to prison. They knew who he was
They knew
before.
who he was before.
Okay,
yeah,
yeah.
you know. So everybody knew him, and everybody knew we were his kids, and it was hard to get away from it. It was hard to get away from it. I mean, and Stirling's a small area, so wherever I went, whatever club I went to or whatever with my friends, you know, the bouncers most probably knew my dad. And
Would people say that to you? Oh, you're so-and-so's daughter, or...
I can't remember if that ever really happened. I have blocked a lot of that out
must have-
mentally to be
yeah.
able to survive, though, you know, because there is a lot that I've tried to forget.
And you don't live here now, you live...
I live in Cyprus.
Is part of that because you can't...
Yeah, because I want to be as distant from my past as possible.
Really? Yeah, but that's like strong that is quite a strong thing, yeah, that you live your life now feeling like you need to be that distant from it.
I need to be, for my own like calmness, my own mental state. Every time I think about going back to Scotland, it gives me such anxiety, like ridiculous anxiety.
Because of what you went through.
Because of what I went through. And you know, not just that, we used to like go on if we were booked to go somewhere, my dad would get pulled in at the airport.
Yeah.
You know, we would be like standing ready to board the plane, and they would pull us off, the whole family, to get searched, to get questioned, and then they would let us get on the plane. So we were humiliated in front of the whole plane and then let back on, you know. And that in itself, traveling as well, is another thing that gives me anxiety.
Still now,
Still now. Still
Does
now.
it happen now or not?
No, it hasn't.
No.
Touch wood happened in the long time.
Right, yeah.
But
But it's important, isn't it? Right, like for people that are listening, the key thing to remember here is, irrespective really of what your dad did or didn't do, right?
Yeah.
Irrespective of the crime, yeah, of how bad and whatever, you didn't do anything.
Exactly.
You didn't
No.
do anything. You live in a completely different country because you don't feel comfortable being there. Does it live with you as well, Lou?
Yeah, it does. And I think it comes out, a lot of mine, when I've reflected on it, a lot of mine is like what George said. Mine is about the trust. My biggest problem because of it is the trust. I don't know who to let into my life. I don't know how I can trust you, because you might end up humiliating me again. Like exactly what George said. When we used to go here, we used to get humiliated. I went to a horse show. I used to love horses. Went with my mum to get tickets. We get out the car and the newspapers are there with a big camera taking pictures of me and my mum to buy tickets for a horse show. Like, this was our life. And I think...
Wow, what? This is when he'd just gone to prison,
Yeah.
Would that end up would the pictures of you end up in the press?
I don't think they printed that one. When I was older, they did. They put our picture in the paper. But it was so chaotic. I mean, like, when we was getting raided, my house was on the same street as my school. So all the police cars outside my house, and then for me to go to school as normal.
Can you, for the purpose of people listening, I have been at a house that's been raided, right? So I know what that looks like, right?
Yeah.
But it's not I want people to understand. What does a raid look like when you're there? Can you describe it?
For me personally, it is chaos, and
You're in bed.
Yeah. So you wait. So you're sleeping.
Oh, we had many though.
Yeah,
we had many
we did.
ways and different. I mean, there was one time my mum was making boiling the kettle, and
Yeah.
there was a policeman just appeared out of nowhere at the back window with like a SWAT shield, and my mum standing just filling the kettle up.
But for me, because I was underage, when they used to like put them in rooms, so they would come into the house. So they would come to the house, try and knock down whatever they could. I mean, we always let them in. You know, we
Yeah.
never had any objection to them coming in and doing their job, because that is their job, and understandable. My dad committed a crime. I'm not sitting here saying that he didn't, you know. But at the end of the day, you do your job. However, the way that they came in, they used to come into the house, be so many people in your space as well, as a young child, in your safety net, in the space where you're supposed to feel safest with your family. They come in, they turn everything upside down. They would then put Georgina, Nicolette, my other sister, my mum and my dad in separate rooms. But because I was underage, they'd tell me to go sit in my room on my own.
So you'd be left in a room on your own. The house is
Yeah.
getting ransacked by
Yeah.
loads of
Yeah.
police. Yeah.
Yeah,
You're like 8, 9 at the time, younger.
yeah. I will never forget, one of them said to me, "Do you have a bedroom?" And I said, "Yeah, this is my house. I have a bedroom." And she said, "Okay, can you go into your bedroom?" And my middle sister came out and she said, "No, she's coming with me. She's coming with me." And when they take my mum or they take my dad, or they take everybody into separate rooms, and then I'd get shipped off to my grandparents because they were raiding the house.
Wow, man.
It was chaos. And then have to go back to school on the Monday and act like a child.
Were you given any like support by anybody?
No.
So like you weren't like when you went to school on Monday, it wasn't like Lou's house has been raided on the weekend, she's gonna need extra support.
No. How many times my mum, George and Nick used to come in and explain it to the teachers and tell them, like, this happened, you know, she might not be okay, she might need to come home. That was it. There was only very few teachers that I'm so grateful for, even to this day, that did stand by and did check in, but there was no other support out there for me, or for George, or for Nick.
No, there wasn't.
It's crazy that like something this big could happen to you and there's no support
There's no
whatsoever.
yeah.
And we know, right, from the charity,
Yep.
we know that this is still the case, right? They don't even record.
They don't know.
There's no record
There's
of
nothing.
children that have had parents gone to prison, right? When it came to visiting your dad, and I don't know who wants to come in first here, but what was the process like? Did you want to visit him first? I mean, that's,
Honestly, sometimes there was times where I didn't want to go.
yeah.
I didn't want to go, not because I didn't want to see him. Part of it, I blamed my dad, obviously, for the position that we were in, and sometimes I didn't want to see him because I was so angry with him. Other times I didn't want to go purely because of how uncomfortable and it felt just not nice, you know, like the whole process, going through the machines and take this off and passports and this and that, like it just felt very not humane, you know,
Like violating.
Yeah.
violating. Yeah.
Obviously, my dad was in prison.
Yeah.
So I remember as a kid visiting him, and I remember how. Well, it's not. You don't feel human, is it? You feel like an animal.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
you
feel
do.
like an
You feel
animal.
like a farm
Exactly,
animal.
exactly. Yeah.
You're being farmed through.
I think it's funny how, even though the time has gone on, I still remember that first visit. That first visit when my dad first got arrested. I was 7, and we went to see him in prison because my mum was like, "Come on, we're going to go see your dad." And they were checking under my mouth. They made me open my mouth. They were like checking that I didn't have anything. Now, how do you process that? There's nobody there actually explaining this process to you or helping you understand as a child what you're going through. And then we had to sit round this round table with the bar, and my dad was separate from us, and all of those feelings. Yeah, you're right. It's
a traumatizing experience for a child.
Yeah, it is.
Was your mum like? Was your mum equipped to be able to explain anything to you, or was it like? Because the reason I'm asking is, my mum's incredible. Yeah, I love my mum, but she was under. She was just an adult going through it. Yeah,
yeah, exactly.
So like, she didn't have the words, the vocabulary.
Yeah.
It was almost like we went in, we'd visit him, we'd get it done, and then we'd get out of there.
Yeah.
There was no
the same.
fallout. There was no like, how you feeling?
No.
Like, what was it like to have your mouth checked?
Yeah.
And don't worry, they do that because of this.
No.
It was like we gritted our teeth, clenched our fists, and got through it, and then got out of it.
Yeah.
And it almost is that survival mode of, we're going to get this done, we're going to deal with it, but we never really spoke about it. We never actually...
It was almost like, you know what, girls, just put your big girl pants on, and we've just got to get through this. My mom was very ballsy, She was a very strong woman. Regardless, you could see, like now, when I look back, I could see how terrified she was. But she would never show it to us, or she would never, try to bring my dad down or anything. She always she was just there constantly, like standing strong through everything. But again, she didn't have, maybe it's because we didn't have the knowledge back then that we do now in this day where, people are more open to communicating, more open to talking about their feelings. Back then, we're talking, nearly 20 years ago,
But I still think now it's like, people talk about their feelings more. And I always say this, everyone's like, talk about how you feel. We're all willing to listen. And I think we're getting there a little bit. Like if you say, I feel depressed. But if you're like, oh yeah, my dad's gone to jail. And I've I don't feel like I'm a human when I go to visit him. I don't think most people would know what to do.
No, they wouldn't.
They don't.
They wouldn't. And that's the thing. Like they don't, because how would they as well, without people that have gone through it, sharing their experiences, understanding those actual deep emotions that were triggered from this kind of stuff. How would they know?
I was 17. One of the raids that we had, I was 17, and I was at work, and my dad called me and he said to me, can you come home? Because they had came after I had left for work. I came home, and on the phone he said to me, look, George, he said, I'm telling you so that don't panic, but they're going to arrest you. And they arrested me. I was 17 years old, as well as our middle sister, Nicolette, my mum, my granddad, everyone that my dad was associated with, and my dad. And they arrested me. They took me to the police station. I was 17 years old.
Why did they arrest you?
Because of what my dad done. They thought that I was involved or that I could give them some information. They questioned me for 8 hours and then put me in a police cell.
Fuck.
And I was 17 years old. I was terrified. And they're asking me questions. Do you have this? Do you have that? You're going to be put in here. And they put me in the police station. There was a concrete slab with, do you remember them blue gym mats?
Yeah.
A blue gym mat on top. And that was it. And I was in the cell until they released me.
That's hard, man.
I was terrified. And I went home. Again, nobody spoke to me. Like, are you okay? They're like, how are you feeling?
About that.
Like, nothing.
And you spent a whole night in there?
I didn't spend the whole night. They released me after a couple of hours.
But still, I've been in them cells a few
Yeah.
times. Right?
It was a one and only time.
For my own fault, but I know what that's like. I interrupted you. Was you going to say something?
No, I was just going to say, I remember that. I remember that day, because that was the day that I was in the police car.
Yeah.
When they arrested my mum, they drove. My mum said, well, what about Lou? Because obviously I was underage. So they drove me in the police car to my grand's house, dropped me off at my gran and granddad's, whilst they arrested them all.
But again, I mean, what did me and my sister, like my younger sister, like I was, 17, 18, something like that. Nicolette was what, 16,
16.
something like that. And what did we do?
This
Why
is-
were
yeah.
we at fault for what my dad did?
I think this is the key thing that I want to get across to people that are listening as well, right? Is like, I know I've sort of potentially like played down the fraud and all of that sort of stuff to a degree. And I think it's, you know, it's up to people that are listening to have their opinions on
Yeah.
what your dad did as
Well,
a crime,
exactly,
right?
but as
irrespective of
exactly,
that,
yeah.
you as his children, and you were, you know, nearly, still not really an
No,
adult, by the way,
yeah,
let's be
yeah.
clear, but like you're completely innocent victims
Yeah.
in all of this. Everything that happens
Yeah.
to you happens to somebody who is completely innocent, entirely innocent. Like, it's not even like you were even playing when you were a
No.
kid, so it wouldn't,
But-
even if you were, it wouldn't be your fault, but you weren't playing any part in it.
No,
And that still happens
yeah,
today,
today.
with all these people that are going to prison. There's children still out there suffering. There's children still out there going through those exact same feelings as what we went through, and that same, you know, painting them out to be the bad ones as well. That hasn't changed. That is still happening.
Yeah, I often think it, you know, because I know that my dad went to prison. And I often, when I see, especially when it's like a real awful crime,
yeah.
you know what I mean? And it'll say he's a father of, or it's a mother of, and you think, however horrible it is that they've done,
Yeah.
What blame? Well, why?
what's happening to those kids,
Exactly.
man?
Yeah.
Like, and that's what, like, that's one of the main reasons why I wanted to have this conversation, is because even the stuff that you've told us up until this point, right? All of them things that you went through, from like the raids, the visits. Were you asked if you wanted to visit him?
No. My
You
mum
just
just kind of
Told
threw
that you
us-
had to go and visit him?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're just going to visit your dad. Okay.
Did you ever question it?
No.
No, I didn't as a kid, right? I didn't. But when we were at Parliament that time, with the charity, and I'm going to say the name again. I've been avoiding saying it because I keep getting it wrong. Children Heard and Seen, yeah. When we were there with them, and I heard a couple of people say, you know, will they want me to visit them? Will I get to visit them? Will I have a say in it? And I was like, even that, you know, I mean, I don't even know if you'd want to be asked, right? Because how do you feel if your dad's saying it's up to you if you want to visit me?
Yeah.
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 Like, what's the right answer there? Well, you're thinking,
You know, to be honest, now with our dad, we've got a much better relationship than what we did before. Like, we're able to kind of have uncomfortable conversations with him, you know, where he will listen and he takes full responsibility for everything that he's done. He never he doesn't pass the buck and say, oh, but I just, no. He has stood up and taken full responsibility for everything that he's done, and how he's hurt us, how he hurt my mum. Like, there was a lot, you know?
yeah,
So,
go on.
I'm just thinking, like, if I was asked back then, do you actually want to go see your dad?
well, you know,
What kid at 7 is going to turn around and say, yeah? Like,
yeah,
no, I want to go play.
yeah,
I
you're a
want to
kid,
go.
innit?
you wanted, but I remember though the first time when he first got arrested, and well, we were really worried about him because we obviously, again, never experienced anything
Yeah.
like that. And I remember wanting to go and see him to make sure that he was okay more than anything. But then after, you know, the more the kind of the time went by, and the more we had to do it every week, and the more it kind of just felt a little bit like, you know, I want my life. I'm young. I want to live my life.
I think
Yeah.
for me as well, like, there was times where, I'll put my hands up, I'm being extremely vulnerable here, but I have an anxious attachment because everybody just, in my mind, just goes, you know? I haven't been able to kind of form those, a solid attachment. So when I was going and seeing my dad and then leaving, again, coming and going and seeing you once a week, how can I build a relationship with my dad seeing him on a weekly basis in a prison? And then also not forgetting that when he'd moved prisons, we'd then have to travel even further to see him.
Yeah.
You know, there was times that we were traveling, like 2 hours just to go see him.
Yeah.
You know, and then the visit, and then by the time you come back, and it is a lot to process. And I think as an adult, I've done a lot of reflecting on it, but genuinely speaking, there was also times where he'd phone and we'd talk, but because he phoned so often, we didn't really have much to talk about. But then you feel bad for him as well, because it's also leaving him. You feel guilt as a child for leaving your dad at the end
responsible
of... Yeah, you
for,
do.
Yeah.
Because you go to your visit and you see your dad for however long, or your mum, and you leave. But when you leave, you do go back to normality.
Yeah.
Albeit a very strange normality compared to other
Everybody
people.
else.
And isolating as well. But then I remember, like, there was times where I did feel responsible for him, and I also felt responsible for my mum.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I personally wanted to be a good child so that it wouldn't make it harder for my mum or make it harder for my dad, or, you know, it's a lot of pressure on a kid.
It's a lot of pressure. And by the way, just, you know, you shared that bit of vulnerability. I have the same wound, yeah?
Yeah.
So my core wound is everybody's going to leave.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so what I tend to do is abandon myself and try and make sure everybody I'm in a relationship with, be it friendship or anything, my key thing is to make sure that they're happy, and I'll do it at the expense of myself just because I'm worried that they'll go.
Yeah.
So I understand the impact of that, and I also understand the impact of, like, you know, most kids, you want to make your mum and dad happy, innit? And if you're growing up in a normal, whatever that means, by the way, but like a family environment where things like this ain't happening, you might try and impress them by being good at school or doing well in the school play or doing, like, and you might try and do all of that in our situation that we grew up in, but the way that you're going to behave is way different when you're going to visit your dad in prison and you can see your mum upset.
Yeah.
The way that you're trying to attach to them looks a whole bunch different to like a like stable family environment.
Absolutely.
Georgina, I want to pick up on something that you said. I feel like, actually, before we pick up on it, I feel like I just want to tell... Are we able to tell a little bit of your dad's story?
Yeah.
Because they painted him as a
Gangster mafia.
as a gangster mafia person, right? And you've said that, and that's not what he was, right?
No.
He grew up with his own hardships.
He did, yeah. And my dad's dad, he was a heroin addict. And then obviously my dad, but this is the cycle, you know, of they were very poor, they didn't have any money. It was very difficult for my gran to raise two children, you know, with a husband who was an addict. My dad didn't become an addict, he became a criminal. You know, so is it that cycle where it's, you know, one thing leads after the other, you know?
Yeah.
And I guess, I mean, it's no excuse. It doesn't mean that just because, you know, my granddad was an addict that my dad had to become a criminal. But I guess he just tried to make the best out of his situation, and he saw this as a way out. No excuses for him. I don't excuse what he did. But yeah, I mean...
Yeah, it doesn't come across like you're trying to excuse. Like,
no.
You've both said a number of times already in this conversation, like, none of this is about, and I think people will get this from listening to it anyway, none of this is about trying to, like, let him off the hook or say that, like, you know, what he did wasn't that bad or whatever. But if people listening can understand, and I think most of the type of listener I get to this podcast will understand anyway, but, like, if you can understand that if somebody grows up in addiction, there's a good chance that they will go into addiction themselves. Like, you've got addiction to alcohol, you can get addiction to crime or addiction to, like, money or addiction to, like, if you've grown up in that hardship and then, you know, you there's this way that I always think, when you get into anything big, when I look at my own story, I got into, like, drug dealing quite big in my mid to late teens, right? it didn't start off big.
Yeah.
It started off as like I was selling a little bit of weed down the park and making a little bit of weed for me to smoke myself, yeah? And then you get addicted to that. And then I can easily see how somebody can end up spiraling and caught up in this whole crime thing, yeah? I just wanted, the reason I brought that up is because having spoken to you before we come in here and stuff, like, I get the sense that your dad's not a bad man, right? He's probably made some mistakes.
My dad's done a lot of reflection. He went to therapy. He is he's of a different mentality. And I think that's hard as well, like to see him go through that, because that means that he had to face his demons, and he had to face a lot of stuff that he was probably pushing down that could have essentially led him to do what he did. And I think if he maybe had a bit more support for him when he was growing up, for him to process his emotions and help him through the life that he went through, it could have been the other way, And I think he has. I'm going to give him credit on that, because
he really
he has done a lot of reflection on himself, and he has taken the time to really work on himself.
Yeah.
And again, look, that's why I wanted to bring up that like cyclic nature of it, to understand that, he went through his own hardship. Because I want to get into, if we can, it might be difficult for you to talk about, but like, have you had to go through a bunch of different emotions for your dad? Let me just say what I think. Like, my dad was an alcoholic, right? My dad is dead now. He went to prison and stuff like that. I've had to go through a lot of work to go through the range of emotions, yeah? It's really hard. You talked about it earlier, Georgina, but it's really hard to feel angry with somebody that you love. Yeah, to feel really let down. It must be difficult now to talk about feeling let down by somebody that you clearly love, yeah?
Yeah, it definitely, I mean, for me and my dad had a tough time. For a long time, I didn't want to speak to him. I was so angry at him, and it was my mum that, she kept, she was like, George, come on, you need to sort things out with your dad. You can't leave it like this. But it went for a long time, a long time. And it's only probably within maybe the last maybe 3 years that I've been able to kind of not overcome, but learn to deal with that anger and maybe set it aside, just to be able to move on, because I feel like life is too short to be bitter. Life is too short to be angry. And I understand that he's done so much work on himself that maybe it's time that I give him credit for what, for how he's worked on himself to be able to move on as a family. And I think now we're in a much better, actually now we're probably in the best place we've been for a long time.
Yeah, and you got to, like, the big piece in that is the accountability from him.
Yeah,
that's allowed you to then.
Absolutely.
Because if there's no accountability, if he's out and he's like, get over it, like, I didn't do it.
I didn't do anything. It wasn't that important.
Then I could see how you would end up like never speaking to him and that being completely fine.
That's okay.
But do you know what I mean? But the fact that he's had to do,
he's done a lot of work. Sure. Yeah, he's done a lot of work on himself. He's came on so much. But I think at the end of the day, what's happened, It's in the past. I think now we need to focus on how to help the next generation of kids that are going to go through this, because it's going to happen. Yeah. It's inevitable. Like, people are going to go to prison. There's kids that are going to be affected. So how do we help them? How can we be there for them? How can, if a 17-year-old child gets arrested, how can we help them, that there's someone going to be there to help them on the other end? Because there was no one there for me.
Yeah.
What do you think helped you two? Lou, let me come to you. Like, is there anything?
It's not gonna get sad now.
Let me say this, yeah? Like, you two are two very rounded people. Yeah, right. And I think there's a good, you'd have a bloody good reason not to be. Yeah. So what do you think's you're getting emotional?
Yeah, I am.
What? What's that coming from? Where's that coming from?
Because it was them. They were the ones. They were the only ones that helped me through it. And if it wasn't for George, Nick, and my mum, I don't know. I don't know where I'd be. But they were the whole. They were my purpose.
Yeah. How? What did they do?
They just.
We stood strong next to each other.
Do you know what?
Through everything.
They just helped me, like.
We're getting you some tissue.
Oh,
Don't worry.
thank you.
Don't worry.
They just. Do you know what? Thank you.
Thanks, Karen.
They helped me turn it into strength.
Right.
You know.
Oh.
They did.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if it was. As a child, obviously looking up to them, you do. I had 2 beautiful sisters, a loving mum, so for me it really was looking at them and maybe as a child almost feeling like, wow, people used to say like, who do you look up to? Who do you look up to? Mine wasn't celebrities. Mine was them because they kept everything as normal as they could.
Yeah.
So yeah,
You carry that, Georgina, don't you?
It was my mum.
It was you too though.
My mum, she was just such a strong woman.
Do you need the tissue?
Do you want one
please.
too?
And like Lou says, she tried to keep everything as normal as possible, and me and Nicolette followed with that because there's 10 years difference between me and Lou. She was the baby and we had to just keep going. We did what we had to.
Do you think you felt responsibility?
Yeah.
I think you and
Yeah.
I think you and Nick both did. I mean, like, I used to come home from school, and George would be at work or, doing things around the house, and my mum would make my middle sister sit down and do my homework with me, and Nicolette would be there, sitting there, and it used to drive me insane because if I wrote something messy, she'd make me rub it out and write it back again. But that was the only bit of normality that I was having as every other child.
Yeah.
And they were the reason that the household could keep going,
We were each other's support system.
Yeah, we were.
And you're quite a fighter, Lou. Is that fair?
I'd like to think so.
Yeah, you come across as like you got. I'm trying to think of nice. In my terminology, I'd say you got a dog in you.
Yeah, I do.
Yes,
I do.
Yeah.
But do you know what? For so many years, I kept my mouth shut because I was scared of people's opinions, their perception. What would they say if they knew this about me? No. I am a fighter. I'd like to think that. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that comes across massively.
Yeah.
And do you know? Can I give you a reflection as well?
Yeah.
Do you know what comes across with you? What I get from you is that you are willing to shoulder it all.
Yeah, that is.
And show up like they say the swan, yeah?
Yeah.
So the swan's doing that underneath, but will always just look elegant and gracious and like that.
Yeah.
That's what you do in it.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Because even when we just brought it up just then, you deflected it onto your mum, yeah? 'Cause
Yeah.
You didn't want to take it.
Yeah.
Fair?
Fair.
Does that feel fair?
That is fair.
Fair.
What do you think? Let me check the time. We're all right for time. Let's go there now. Then let's talk about where we're at now, because I feel like you two are both. I met you at the House of Commons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we were there for children.
Heard and seen.
Fucking hell, man! I can't say it. Innit? Children heard and seen. Right? We were there for that charity, and I think of all the people in the room, you two, I feel like are bang ready to start like campaigning.
Oh,
Do you know what I mean?
absolutely. Let's go. I'm ready to go to war.
Yeah. What do you think? What like? It's probably a difficult question, right? But what do you think needs to be done? what do we need to do to get, you know, people to understand, or what support does there need to be?
I think we need to talk about it, and I think we need to get it out there. I think we need people, the general population, the people that haven't experienced this, as well as the people that are experiencing it currently, have in the past. I think we just need to talk about it, and I think we need to get it out there that I can recognize now as an adult what my dad did and how it was my dad and not me. But I think having somebody there currently talking about it as a child that's going through it to help them process all of those emotions is vital. You know, there was nothing for us even Googling it, you know, parent in prison. There was no support out there specifically for the child, you know, and kind of curated specifically for that child, because people can go to prison for different crimes. People can have different relationships with their parents. People can have a range of things going on in their home life. So it's not just necessarily a parent going to prison and generating support for that. It's having support in place that can be curated to help everybody, even if that is a space to talk about it, if it is, you know, financial support, whatever the case may be. I just think that it's so vital. I really do. Because
or even just some advice, you know.
Not everybody's as lucky to have a
What we
supportive family, you know. That's not the case in a lot of cases, and they need the support just as much.
Yeah, that's huge, right? You can see that as a family, you got a real strong family, innit? You can see that. It comes across when you're talking. But like, you know, there's a lot of families out there
that don't
have that.
Yeah, and it's important to recognize that and be able to find a way to give some support to the child, to them people, because
they're children.
They need to understand that it's not their fault and it's not them. Like, they're not to blame for their parent being in prison. And it's important for them to understand that. Otherwise, it just goes downhill.
That's a really, like, it always comes back to some of that stuff. And that's, like, basic's probably the wrong word, but it's simple, innit?
Yeah.
To, like, you, like, when you were a child specifically, like a young child, like, you needed messaging from people that said that, I don't know, you're not alone, this isn't your fault.
Yep. I mean, like, it's true. You know, you add everything else that I went through as a kid. On top of that, I was getting bullied. You know, it's a lot of things to process. And I think having that space and I wish I had somebody. And also, as grateful as I was as the support from the family, sometimes I didn't want to put that on my family.
Yeah.
Sometimes I didn't want to go to my sisters or my mum and tell them or cry, you know? And I think having maybe just somebody there or something in place to really nurture that child through what they're going through is vital.
Yeah.
Do you know what comes up if you search parent in prison now?
No.
I'm asking out of interest, right? Because even, like, you think about that'd be the first thing that a kid would do now, isn't it? Right?
Yeah.
If I wonder if it comes up with resources, or if it just comes up with, like, comes up Bernardo's at the top, Childline, but there's no specific, like, support. Do you know what I mean? It's just So that would be like a good starting point, wouldn't it?
Absolutely. And I think this is why the charity is such an amazing charity with what they're trying to do for the kids. I mean, Sarah and the rest of them, they've really put in so much work for this.
Yeah.
You know, and I really hope that something can get done.
Yeah.
To provide support.
I think that's where, like, a great starting point is to, like, really start to create some resources. So when I look at, like, what we've done with NACOA for children of alcoholics, like, as a child, you'd want, and I think I was going to say a leaflet, but in today's world,
It's like socials.
Yeah, or you want to be able to give a link, right?
Yeah.
A link to a kid that's like, oh, you're going to have to go, you're going to visit or your dad, like, your mum or your dad's gone to prison. Here's a link about visits.
Yeah.
And there's just loads of video.
Yeah.
Like, what's it going to be like when you're going through the check-in? Like, what's it going to be like? You know, that thing, like, you don't think about that when you said they're searching in your mouth.
Yeah.
That's so invasive for a young kid.
I'm 28 now. That happened when I was 7.
Yeah.
And I still remember, even down to the smell of what it smelled like.
And you didn't know they were going to do it until they did it.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you know what I mean? And it's like, look, I don't know if you can get to a place where they don't have to do that to kids, right? But if they do, we should at least be arming kids with the knowledge of what's about to happen to them. Try and reduce the chance of trauma happening. Do you know what I mean? And then get people to share their experiences so that these kids that go and do it can hear all the things that you think. You know, like, I thought it was really powerful, Georgina, when you said, like, I felt like I didn't want to go and visit him because I was angry at him.
Yeah. Cause
like, that's confusion, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because, like, there'll be times when you think, I don't want to visit him. I don't want to have to go because I have to say goodbye.
Yeah.
But you don't want to let him down, so you feel like you have to go.
But there's no space for you to process those emotions as a child.
No.
There's no support there for you to actually work through those feelings of anger, confusion, missing him, not wanting to see him. There's nothing actually there.
Yeah.
It's essentially down to the caregiver, if there is one, still there to make the decision as to whether or not you're going to go see your parent.
Yeah, and there's even stuff like, you know, when my dad was in jail, he made me like a money box out of clay or something.
Yeah, we got them.
We used to
You
get
get all
them.
them, or they'll make you like a
painting or
a bird that's made out of like receipts or something, isn't it? Yeah? They send it all, but like it's obvious, it's very obviously a gift from someone in prison.
Yeah.
And I remember my mum, like, I remember saying, can I take this? I want to take this into show and tell. And my mum being like, don't.
Yeah.
You don't want to take it.
Yeah.
Because she knew that I'd have to
knew-
go in and be
yeah.
like, oh, my dad sent it. Where's your dad?
Yeah.
Oh, he made it in prison.
Yeah.
And I remember like being innocent with that, you know, and just being, well, he's in prison. Like,
Yeah.
Because it's your normal as well,
it's
isn't
your
it?
normal,
is.
yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Is.
And people don't understand that that's like the normal life that you live. And I had it all, you know. I had the police turning up at the house when you're a kid.
Yeah.
And
It's
like,
horrible. It's just traumatizing.
it is traumatizing, yeah. And by the way, I went on to be a young adult who had raids come into my mum's house because of me. Do you know what I mean? So I've lived it from all angles. Do you
But
know what I mean?
this is the thing as well. Like, without having that support in place to generally break that cycle,
What happened?
Yeah.
what do they expect? Because I went the complete other way. I was just driven by, I can't do anything wrong. I don't want to do this wrong.
Yeah.
I don't want my fear to do something wrong and step out of line of the law. It is just driven, you know, like it, without having that support to actually go through those things and understand what you went through as a child, what we went through as a child, what other children are going through in today's world. What do you expect?
Exactly. And those things get ingrained in you, innit?
Yeah.
Because
they
I
do.
grew up hating police, yeah?
Yes, yeah.
So I grew up, and I've done work for the police now, with the work that I do. And I remember it was so ingrained in me, even though I was going to do stuff for the police and I wanted to help and create change, I was meeting police men and women and being like, fucking hell, you're actually all right.
Yeah.
I can't believe that you're a normal human.
Yeah.
Because it was so ingrained in me that they are, you know, we used to call them the filth. I grew up calling them the filth. That's what they were.
Yeah.
Like in my head. And so that was like ingrained in me. But again, just through simple conversation, do you know what I mean? You can see that the impact that it had on me is going to be slightly different to the impact that it had on you.
course,
To you.
yeah.
That's why these conversations are so important.
Absolutely.
I'm aware of time. We've got a couple of minutes left, and I want to ask you both, and I'll ask you, Lou, first, and then I'll come to you, George. If you could speak to, let's say, your 7-year-old self now, or anybody that's 7 that's just found out that one of their parents is going to prison, what would you tell them?
Oh. I'd tell them, you're going to be okay, but it's okay to also not be okay. And it's okay to feel lost and confused. But I think it's also very important for me, I turned that into strength, you know. I went on and I got a bachelor's in criminology and a master's in forensic psychology because I wanted to understand what I went through. So I do think that to anybody, if there is anybody that is going through it at the minute, I just want to give them a hug. I really would. And just for them to know that it is possible to get through it, and that you can turn it into something good, you know, but it's also okay if you're feeling it, you know, it's okay for you to feel those emotions and be confused and be lost and everything like that. And also, it's not your fault.
Yeah.
It's not your fault.
That's
Absolutely.
a massive one, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not your fault. Yeah. And what about you? What would you say to your, let's say 17, right? If that was the age, 17-year-olds.
I would say to myself, you're stronger than what you think you are.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I would say to myself.
Can I ask you something? Do you know how strong you are now?
No.
You should. By now, you should.
You doubt it, innit?
Yeah, I
can see
doubt
it
myself
in
a
you.
lot. I do. I totally doubt myself a lot. But
You shouldn't.
Do you know what you come across to as me? I don't want to put you on the spot, but you like you come across to me as you're like strong, like a dam that's holding it all at bay. But you're worried if you make one wrong foot,
Yeah.
the
Yeah,
dam's going to open and it's going to just come.
Just gonna come.
That is
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, that's me.
That is
totally,
you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I would say to myself that you are stronger than what you think, because no matter what comes your way, you find a way to deal with it.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's the way that my mum raised us. I don't know if that was because that kind of mentality has always been, you know, that was kind of the way that she lived. And I think it's the way that it's been installed in me as well, that no matter what comes my way, I will find a way to I will deal with it and just keep going.
Yeah.
You know?
Maybe it's just because you're a good, strong person too.
Yeah.
Who knows? Maybe.
You're not having it. You're like,
She bats it off.
She bats it off, innit?
She bats it off.
You're used to that, Lou.
Yeah, she bats it off all the time. She bats it off all the time.
Well, I won't put you under any more pressure to accept the recognition.
Thank you.
truth.
Thank you.
Yeah, there you go.
There we go. I accepted it.
Look, I'm going to wrap this up, but I just want to say, I want to say thank you to both of you for doing it. It's not easy what you've done, right? Like, I had a look round. You can't find much out there of people sitting down in the way that you both have and talking about it in this way. I think you're both a testament to yourselves and to your family, to your mum and your dad, and your sister as well. And if nothing else, if people have got a parent that's in prison and they watch or listen to this, they're going to be inspired, you know what I mean, to know that if they can hang in there,
They'll get through it.
they'll get through it and they'll be all right. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
It's been
thank
an
you.
absolute pleasure to
Honestly,
be here.
thank you for having us.
Thank you for having
Thank you.
us.
Thank you.
Brilliant.
I did tell you it would be dysfunctional, so thank you for sticking around till the end here. And if you have enjoyed this podcast, then please help me to grow Dysfunctional by sharing with your friends on social media. You can find me at Josh_FFW. And then wherever you're listening to this or watching this, please make sure that you've liked and subscribed, left us a 5-star review and a comment if your platform allows it. And I'll see you on the next one.